No, you just didn't stumble upon some video where they're telling silly stories around the campfire in front of LEDs. We're going to show you the transplant we did on these two devices, and we didn't use the ESP8266, but we're still using Tasmota. What chip did we use? Let's check it out. The OG, yes, that is his initials. He's got a little public service announcement for you.
Like and subscribe, or you will have a flood like this. at your mama jump in.
So this is a little follow-up of our transplant video, and kind of have to take it back and explain where things kind of started somewhat. Well, this is the ESP8266 model, and of course it's just got a little mini or micro USB, whatever you want to call it. I get the names confused. You just plug up your USB cable and you can simply write your own code to it. You don't need any typical flashers or anything like that. Then there's the Wemos D1 Mini. This is a little, I would call it a clone more like, because it has the ESP12F on it. And one cool thing about these is they don't come with the header pins soldered already on them, so they're great for little projects where you don't want these header pins. Then there's some you may not even see. This one, this is the ESP8285 model. It's just a little bit smaller. The ESP8285 is pretty much the same processor as the ESP8266, except instead of having external flash memory, it's on the same die, and this comes with the 1 meg on die. And then came out the ESP32. Now there's tons of different boards of these, and the cool thing about ESP32 is it brought on Bluetooth, it's dual core, they added all kinds of different pins, from touch sensors to audio outs to digital to analog converters and vice versa, and pull downs and pull ups. There's all kinds of pins. The ESP32 is very, very versatile, especially it does come with Bluetooth as well. So these are just little dev boards, same thing. And there's tons of different flavors of the ESP32. They even have this little one that looks like a Wemos D1 Mini, but of course you can see it has the dual pins on it. So of course you wouldn't even use this with a breadboard, because then you'd be jumping all these pins when you put it in the breadboard. But they're great for little small projects where you want to use an ESP32 and don't want to just have to put that straight on the board. Another thing with the ESP32 is it does support Ethernet. So then someone came out with, and yeah, you've probably seen this if you watched the Zigbee video with Tube's Zigbee coordinator, because it's cool and stuff, is this one has the Ethernet right on it, because then you don't have to use the Wi-Fi on the chip. And there's all kinds of different flavors of the ESP32, some with a little antenna connector, so you can do an external antenna. And you can see there's just all kinds of different form factors of these boards. And, well, what's next, right? Well, that brings us to the ESP32C3. And this one's a little dev kit board that I picked up off of Amazon a while back. So you can tell it's a pretty small board compared to, say, the Node MCU. Just a little bit smaller. Now this one is a little dev kit for, does have the RGB on it, so you can do some testing and whatnot. You've got your same kind of two buttons and all the GPIO pins you probably need enlisted on the bottom. So cool little dev kit. Now the one thing that is different about this processor is it's a RISC-based processor, and it does also have Bluetooth. So in my opinion, this was kind of to fill that gap of, well, you guessed it, last video where we had the WB3S 2U module that was, I think this is Beacon that makes this one, the chip inside. This is to compete with this chip. That way it would have Bluetooth scanning, plus you'd have that hardware PWM, which is great for LEDs, because the ESP8266 was all done via software, which is PWM is when you're dimming some of your LEDs for like light bulbs and LED strips, and you don't get that kind of flicker when you have, say, Wi-Fi sharing, etc. So pretty awesome they did come out with this. Now, one big change, of course, I did mention was the RISC-based processor. As the recording of this video, Tasmota does support the ESP32C3. You can compile your own builds to flash it on there, as well as there are some pre-compiled binary files. So don't worry, you can just follow some instructions. We'll leave it down below on how to flash this ESP32C3 with Tasmota. And we're going to get to show you that as well. So what about directly competing with the ESP12F module, right? I mean, the pinout looks way different, right? And this is the ESP32C312F. And we'll leave the link down below where you can get your own little chips like this. It does say AI on it, but that's going to be the ESP module. It's just, I think AI Thinker is the one packaging these in these cool little modules. Now, one thing I would like to do, or would like they would make a module that would compete, I don't have one on hand, is the TYWE2S, I believe. I wish they would make one that would directly pin out with that one. That way we could convert even more stuff. So if you know some stuff out there, I've seen some little conversion adapter boards, and we'll leave some pictures up, I'm sure. And if you know anything else, or if AI could make us one, that'd be awesome. That would compete directly with that TYWE2S around. So I think that's the WB2S that's in that Beacon module. I know there's tons of words and terminology, but you'll find all that stuff down below in the description. Now, the cool thing you'll notice is it's the same pinout and same exact package size. So over here, we have the ESP8266. This is the ESP12F module that you see, such as exactly here, that we showed for doing the transplant to get rid of this guy here, the WB3S. These are the kind of non-flashable, I'd say, at this time. And this is going to be the ESP32C3. And of course, it does look a little bit different in package, but it does fit exactly. And they've even designed it where the pinouts are pretty much the same. Now, there are a few different things on the GPIO pins, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Then, of course, there's the WB3S Beacon one here. And then over here, we have the Realtek one, which is also that other 2U module that I don't really see as much as we see these now. So the cool thing is, if you want to do your transplant and there's an issue with that GPIO 15 needing to be low to boot, like the ESP8266, which we ran into, this chip works great. Plus, it does give you that hardware PWM, which means just the LEDs are going to look better. So what about flashing this guy? So this is the code burner that we showed on the transplant. And it's the same little ESP12F. You just popped it in there, and then you would just hook up the USB cable on the bottom, and you'd be able to flash whatever project you want on here. Well, that's the same package, of course, with the ESP32C3. It just pops right in, right? But then there's a problem. You can't flash it using the same exact, just hook up the USB cable and roll. There's actually 3 pins that need to be changed or pulled different ways. And we'll leave the little picture up here in the corner, Mr. Editor, Travis, you. So to do that with the same exact code burner without having to buy something new, You know, you probably always think I'm trying to get you to buy something, but no, use what you already have. And I just took some jumper wires, and you're going to jumper GPIO 16. Now, this is not the same GPIO pin as on here. Remember I said the pinouts were a little bit different, but on the code burner, it's listed GPIO 16. And I actually want to pull that one high. So I just went ahead and plugged it into the ESP01 slot down here on the bottom left. That's going to pull this GPIO pin high. Now there's another one, GPIO 15. Now remember, we had to pull that low on the ESP8266. Well, we need to pull that one high. So all I'm doing is taking GPIO 15 and I'm jumping it to 3.3 volts, just like that. So you can see I have GPIO 16. This is just a female to female and then male to male. I couldn't find a male to female jumper at the time, so I just kind of improvised. Then I'm taking GPIO 15 and bringing it high on 3.3 volts. Now the third pin is GPIO 0, right? Well, that's actually GPIO 9 on the new chip. And the way you'll do that one, when you apply power, just hold down the flash button right here. And then when you plug it in, it will go into bootloader mode and you'll be able to flash this one. Now, you really need to flash this. You can only flash this with one tool at this time, which is the ESP tool Pi, or you can flash it with Platform IO when you're doing VS Code. Now, also for support wise, I have seen some GitHub threads on ESP Home about possibly supporting this, but I couldn't find anything offhand saying, hey, we do support this chip in ESP Home just yet. But maybe soon ESP Home will support this guy and we can do some cool little projects with it as well. Now, one thing I will say, I am using the ESP32C3 FN4. Now that one's going to be a 4 megabyte flash. I know there's also another one, the C3-2M. Now be careful with that one. That one is listed, if you look on AI Thinker's website in the data sheet, it is designed for 2 megabytes of external flash. Now one thing I did notice, and maybe we can update the description down below and we do find out, it does say it supports Bluetooth LE, which is low energy. Now, I haven't been able to get ESP Tool to show it has Bluetooth capabilities, but it's here on the data sheet. So maybe it's just not fully developed on the drivers and the SDK, etc. Now, one thing, it does support 20 megahertz and 40 megahertz. I know some people may be running 40 megahertz. So you'll get up to 150 megabit, which I really don't need. Is there a big difference between 150 megabit and 70 something megabit with these little chips? Probably not. You're just doing MQTT from them on usually. So it does talk about Bluetooth, Bluetooth mesh, etc. We just talked about that. And again, it is a RISC-V single core processor. So it's much different than you've seen on the ESP32 and the ESP8266, the previous model. So that may be confusing when you talk about the ESP32. Now down to the cool stuff. There's 22 GPIOs, you get your I2C, etc., and you get your LED PWM, which is very cool. It's up to 6 channels. We're only needing it most probably 5 because you got your red, green, blue, warm white, and cool white, and maybe another LED for like a status light. So there's your 6. Now it does support USB and JTAG, and I'm not using that right now, but kind of cool to see that. Then you have your 2 analog to digital 12-bit, and it says up to 6 channels. You also get a temperature sensor. I believe that temperature sensor is on board. Timers, watchdog timers, power management, secure boot, and yeah, there's secure boot, meaning that we could eventually, just like with the ESP32, having to swap an ESP32 for an ESP32 because secure boot and everything else is enabled. Now they do have all the GPIO pin descriptions if you want to come dig through all that stuff and what each pin can do. Now, to flash this thing, you will need to actually hold GPIO 2, which we talked about with the code burner. You'll need to hold that one high, meaning you'll have to put 3.3 volts on it. GPIO 8, you'll have to also put 3.3 volts on it. GPIO 9, you'll have to hold to ground, hold it low. I know this is a bit different for if you're around the 8266, you typically just held that GPIO 0 to ground. Well, we got to do 3 pins now with this guy. So that's where the little difference comes in and why we had to do those jumpers. Now, of course, because things can change and things evolve and get easier over time. So we'll leave the links down below and update things if it does get a little easier, which I'm sure it will with flashing the ESP32C3. But as of this time, you will need to either build your own with VS Code by compiling your own from Tasmota. Maybe ESP Home will support it at one time. It will really make it easier. But as of now, there is a compiled bin that Jason2866, which is one of the developers of Tasmota, you've probably seen him on some of the GitHub requests and whatnot over on their project. He has a folder which is much appreciative. There is a ESP32C3 needed files. Now, what you'll need to do is go follow through and download all these files, or you can just come and download his entire repo. And he does leave the exact command line where you can paste it in there. Now, this is going to be for whatever operating system, because ESP32C3 is not just designed for Windows or Linux or whatever. It'll just work with Python. You'll also will need the Tasmota 32c3.bin, which is in the folder right behind this one. And in the other folder, you'll see it says Tasmota 32c3 bin. Oh, and cool, he does have the Tasmota 32c3 2 meg bin as well to support those ones with the external flash that we mentioned. We'll go ahead and plug in our flasher, the little code burner we talked about with the 2 jumpers. Now, if you want to do something else with, say, a little jig of some sort and apply your VCC and ground and hold those 2 pins high and that GPIO 9 low, you can do something like that. I've done that as well with modifying my little jig that I use for flashing the ESP8266s. So we'll plug this one in and hold down that flash, and then we'll just take this exact syntax and we'll copy it over and paste it right into our command line. Again, this doesn't matter what OS you're using, just make sure you do have ESP32C3 installed. If you don't know what that is, we'll leave the link down below. You can follow their instructions. It's pretty easy to install. And we'll go ahead and paste that in. It will find the COM port automatically. And you'll see once it starts, it should take off. If not, then you may want to check your pins to make sure you do have those 2 high and that 1 low. Now, this is what I was talking about. I don't see the features showing Bluetooth at this time. I don't know if it's something just with ESP Tool or whatnot. I haven't played with the SDK directly to see if we can get Bluetooth working just yet. So if you get Bluetooth working on these, definitely let us know in a comment down below. But it'll go through and flash all the little parts and pieces to it, and then that's it. You'll be ready to go and you can reset your chip. So definitely undo any of those highs or lows or whatever it may be, which typically in this code burner you won't be holding down flash, and you can just reset the thing, and then you can even hit up serial straight on it, or you can just do the AP mode and you can get into the GUI of Tasmota. Now I just pulled up Termite here just to see, put it on the same COM port, and you can see this is the straight up console. If you do want to just go ahead and put it on your Wi-Fi right here, it's a lot easier. And some may not remember how to do that since we're so spoiled with the other ways, but it's pretty cool to do it through serial. And then whenever you see it join up, if you miss the IP address, you can just type in IP address and it will show you your IP address right here, which you can browse to get to the GUI. And there we are, and you can see we do have our ESP32 temperature. Pretty cool stuff. And if you look in the information tab, you'll see we're currently as recording 9503, the full build, and there it is in all the glory, ESP32C3 flash size 4 megabytes, and Everything is there. You'll notice there's a couple cool little different things. Now the consoles, you'll get two consoles. There's the Barry scripting console. And yeah, that's a whole nother deal. We're not going to go down into that one just yet. It's pretty powerful stuff though. Go check it out if you want to. And we get into the console itself, and there it is, the pure glory of ESP32C3. Now you'll notice one thing that is a little different. And I have noticed something, I don't know if it's due to this development. Sometimes the GUI is rather laggy per se, and the page will fail to load. I don't know why that is just yet. You can see I clicked it here and the main menu kind of hangs out. It says it can't find it. But then as soon as you reload it, the main menu will come back sometimes. And you'll know I don't have anything configured on here. So there's no MQTT stuff. See, it came right back. Probably due to it just being new software. So down in the configure module stuff or configure template, whichever one you're used to doing, you notice you'll get all these GPIO pins, and they're not all usable on this package that we're talking about here. But of course, there's many different packages of the ESP32C3. And you do get all the cool features. Now, not everything works exactly with Tasmota right now. I have used a couple different things from your typical buttons and switches and LEDs and PWM that all works fine for me. And so does the relays, whatever it may be. Definitely cool to do a little DIY project or a transplant or whatever it may be with this ESP32C3 and use the same software knowledge that you already know for doing all the little configurations. So one project I did end up using this in was the Treat Life GlowLight. If you want to feel like messing with this and it's a fun little project to do, I'll leave the link down below. But it's a very simple little lamp per se. It comes with this board in the bottom, and you simply just pull the screws off under the little rubber feet. This comes off. Now this black pad was like tons of glue is stuck to the main board. This just kind of goes down in here, has the USB port on the side, and then there's a button, and then the lamp itself is just a big diffuser per se with a wire that I unsoldered. And this wire actually just ties into this touch sensor up top. It's a little capacitive touch and just solders to this point right here. And I took it apart just to make it easier. Just one little solder, and then you can see there's the RGB and then the white LEDs, the little yellow ones. Now it does come with the WB3S, unfortunately. Now, if you do swap in the ESP12F, there's one issue with, I believe it's this button on the side. It doesn't allow for you to do GPIO 15 with this button because you do need to pull GPIO 15 low. But that's on the ESP8266. Well, you can see we swapped in ESP32C3 module in that same 12F form factor. The cool thing about this, we didn't have to modify any traces and do anything weird for it to get the touch sensor working. We just swapped the board, and then we got that same cool hardware PWM goodness and ready to go. And then possibly eventually we'll get the Bluetooth scanning in this chip as well. So definitely cool little chip you can do and do little cool projects with, and gives you an alternative to just using the ESP8266, especially when you need all them other cool features. So hopefully you've learned something here with you don't limit yourself just to the ESP8266. Plus you get that cool PWM hardware goodness with these. So if you've done some transplant projects and this would be perfect for it and definitely going to use these chips, let us know down below in the product you did use them in. And again, if you know something that does do a direct transplant for that WB2S, that little weird side module that's really got a low profile, definitely let us know down below. And thank you to all the Patreon subscribers. Definitely couldn't do it without you.
Click all those buttons and y'all take care. What is it again? Watch the outro starring me. And
There you
y'all
go.
take care. Look at all this blood. It's so much. Hey guys, do you see this right now?
Yeah, they're on the camera.
Do you see this right now? Oh my gosh. This is so much. Look. Make them look. Let me tell them something. Like and subscribe or you will have a flood like this.